Going to Blackpool Pleasure Beach Resort can be a fun and exciting thing to do, but are you making the most of your visits, or are you making these common mistakes that so many people make when they visit the pleasure beach? Let's take a look. Hello, I'm Scott and you're watching Your Experience Guide. I have been a season pass holder at Blackpool Pleasure Beach for 20 years now. So I've seen a lot of things that do and don't work when visiting the pleasure beach. So I'm going to talk about all of those in this video, and hopefully they will help improve your next visit to the pleasure beach. The first and most obvious place for me to start in this video is to talk about pleasure beach pricing and ticketing. For the best prices for Blackpool Pleasure Beach Resort, it is to go on their website. Their official website always has offers and deals on in advance of your visit. So if and when you are planning your trip to the pleasure beach, don't think about we might get the best deal on the day, on the gate. Book in advance. Give yourself 4 or 5 weeks ahead of time. Book those tickets and you could potentially save up to £20 a person. For example, quite often at the minute you can find £30 tickets for adults or £25 tickets for juniors on the official Pleasure Beach website. If you don't book those and you just turn up on the day, you will have to pay £50 for adults to get into the pleasure beach. I think the junior price is slightly cheaper, but still significantly more than what it is on the official website in advance of your visit. So you could be saving yourself in excess of £20 per person by booking in advance and online. That £20 could go a long way to maximising your day at the pleasure beach, either through buying merch or buying something else in Blackpool whilst you're in the town. So moving on, let's talk about the rides at the pleasure beach and the order that you should go on them when you visit the pleasure beach. Now, a common thing that I read in the summer about the pleasure beach is, we went to the pleasure beach and we only went on 3 rides. And I ask, what on earth were you doing all day? How have you only managed to go on 3 rides all day? Well, it's a common mistake that people make. They go straight to the big one, they go straight to Icon, or they don't even arrive at the pleasure beach for opening time. So let's start with the opening time. If Pleasure Beach are advertising a 10 o'clock opening, I would recommend being parked up and thinking about walking to the pleasure beach for around 9:30, because quite often the pleasure beach do open their doors a little bit earlier than the advertised opening time. That's not to say that the rides will open earlier than advertised, but it's best to get in the park early, figure out where you're going to go, figure out what rides you want to do, figure out what time things are opening or happening around the park, and not be stuck in a big queue outside the park waiting to get in. So once you're inside the park, where should you go first? Well, in my opinion, don't go to the big one, don't go to Icon, because that's where everybody goes. So to maximise your day at the pleasure beach, think about doing some of the lower capacity attractions first. Included in that is roller coasters like Nickelodeon Streak, formerly known as Roller Coaster, located in Nickelodeon Land. It's usually one of the first attractions to open at the pleasure beach anywhere across the park. It only has the one train, so when the queues are all inside the park and Nickelodeon Land is busy, Nickelodeon Streak quite often has a long queue. But you can avoid waiting in that queue by heading to it as your first roller coaster of the day. Head straight there once you're inside the park at opening time. Wait for them to open it. You might be on the first train of the day. And straight away, you've got a roller coaster ticked off and you can move on to the next attraction that you're going to do. Now, for those of you that like to count your roller coaster credits or simply go on every roller coaster available, located nearby to Nickelodeon Streak is the Blue Flyer. It is a children's roller coaster, but again, it is a low capacity roller coaster, only has the one train. It is a short train, and if you're an adult, you're only likely to get 1 person per row. But if you want to do all the coasters, then start with Nickelodeon Streak and then do Blue Flyer straight away after it. And then you've got 2 roller coasters done probably in the first half an hour of your day. So whether you go on Blue Flyer or not, what I would recommend doing next is Avalanche. It's a short walk away from Nickelodeon Land, and it's another roller coaster that has lower capacity compared to the big one, Icon, and some of the other stuff at the pleasure beach. Now the reason for that is, even though it runs 2 trains at peak times, there is only 7 rows, and quite often what you'll find with Avalanche is people will sit on their own because the seating is quite tight. Now of course you're going to get families who sit together on it in twos. The trains do take up to 14 people per train, but if say you've got a group of 7 or 8 lads who are all together as a group and friends, and none of them are together, then they're all going to sit on their own in most cases. So you're not going to have a full capacity train there. You're going to basically be running at half capacity, even though the full train is actually full. So that does cause the queue to build up quite often. And quite often people do visit Pleasure Beach in groups of friends, and they do want to sit on their own on something like Avalanche. So it's very understandable why people will take their own rows on that, but as a result the queue will be a lot longer. To avoid this issue and to avoid queuing a long time for Avalanche, do it early. Do it while everyone else is queuing for the big one and Icon, because that is where most people go when the Pleasure Beach first opens. They're of course the biggest draw to the Pleasure Beach, so they attract the most people in that first hour or two. So if you can go on Nickelodeon Streak and or Blue Flyer, then Avalanche, you've already done 3 of the attractions, 3 roller coasters, probably in your first 40 minutes at Pleasure Beach, and straight away you're not going to be one of those people writing on social media saying, I only did 3 rides all day. So where next from Avalanche? Well, the Revolution is the obvious choice because it's right next to Avalanche. You come off Avalanche, it's a short walk, straight onto the Revolution, up the steps. Again, in that first hour, you're probably going to be getting straight on it before most other people, because at this point, you've done those other 2 or 3 roller coasters, and other people are still either stood in the big one queue, stood in the Icon queue, and you're going round on various different rides in the Pleasure Beach thinking, well, I could have been stood in that queue, but here I am. I'm doing my 4th ride of the day on the Revolution. Like Nickelodeon Streak, Blue Flyer and Avalanche, Revolution is a low capacity roller coaster. Because it's a shuttle roller coaster and not a full circuit one, it can only have 1 train. It's literally impossible for it to have 2 trains. So of course, that means that it will get a bigger queue when there's more people in the park and everyone starts to filter away from the big one and Icon. So get on the Revolution early, do it while it's got no queue, and then you can move on to Steeplechase, another low capacity attraction at the Pleasure Beach. This is because of the type of ride it is. You sit on a horse. You can only have 2 people per horse. And again, in most cases, if it's a group of friends, people will sit on their own and separate across all 3 of the lanes to try and race each other. Of course, because it's only 1 or 2 people per horse and there's 3 horses per track, if people are riding solo on it, it's going to build the queue up. And that's just normal. Now, it is worth me noting, at this point in time of filming, Steeplechase in 2025 has been opening at 12 o'clock when the Pleasure Beach has been opening at 11 o'clock. Now, I'm not sure if when the Pleasure Beach moves to 10 o'clock openings, if it'll start opening at 11 o'clock or stay at 12 o'clock. I'm not sure. But what I would still do is recommend heading to Steeplechase after you've done the other attractions and getting on it just in time for it opening, ahead of doing something like the big one or Icon. So at this point in time, if this was my day at Pleasure Beach and I was doing it in this order, I would consider doing the big one and Icon at this time of the day. However, if they still have large queues, then it might be worth leaving them for the time being, heading over to the Big Dipper, heading over to an Infusion and getting those done before you do big one and Icon. And in that case, you're probably leaving the best 2 roller coasters at Pleasure Beach until the last. Now, I've not included the Grand National in any of this just yet, because I don't know when the Grand National will be opening in the 2025 season. It is currently closed for refurbishment, but expected to open at some point in the 2025 season. If you are watching this video in the summer of 2025 and the Grand National is back open at the Pleasure Beach, then usually the Grand National does open at 12 PM on any given day at the Pleasure Beach. Doesn't matter what time the park opens, it usually opens at 12 PM. So in that case, if you are at the Pleasure Beach in the summer and the Grand National is open or scheduled to open for 12 o'clock, then it might be worth heading there as soon as you've done the other attractions that I mentioned doing, the first 5, get over to the National. I appreciate that it's at the other side of the park, but it's always better to do the Grand National before it gets a big queue. Now there's one more attraction to talk about before I move on to the next mistake to avoid at the Pleasure Beach. Valhalla. With it not quite being the summer yet, Valhalla has only been on reduced hours at the Pleasure Beach. Now, at the minute, I don't know if this will continue into the summer when it's longer opening hours and better weather. So as much as I would like to say get to Valhalla for this time or that time, at the minute I can't guarantee what time Valhalla will open. But a lot of people do Valhalla as their last ride of the day. Something to consider with that though. If you are going to do Valhalla as your last ride at the day at Pleasure Beach, just consider how far you've got to drive home if you are driving home or travelling home by train or bus. If you've got a long way to go, bear in mind that Valhalla is a soaker and you could be travelling a long distance home absolutely soaked through. So if you really want to do Valhalla, but you've got a big journey ahead at the end of your day, maybe consider taking some spare clothes and putting them in the locker at the Pleasure Beach whilst you're there all day. And then once you've done Valhalla, you can get your clothes out of the locker, get changed in the toilet, and travel home not being soaked through. When visiting Blackpool Pleasure Beach Resort in 2025, to access the rides, you will need your e-ticket on your phone in the Pleasure Beach app to get through the ride scanners. To make this easier for yourself and to not run your phone battery down, you are able to go to one of the shops in the park, most notably the Wallace and Gromit shop or guest services by the front of the park, and get a paper ticket. The paper ticket will do the exact same job as the e-ticket on your phone in the Pleasure Beach app. It's got the same barcode on and it will open the ride scanners for you to access the ride queues on any given ride at the Pleasure Beach. Using your e-ticket to scan onto the rides at the Pleasure Beach has been something that the Pleasure Beach have been doing for the last couple of years. And it can be frustrating if you've got an old phone and your battery runs down really quickly. So to avoid that situation, especially on the days when the Pleasure Beach is open from like 10 AM to 10 PM, go to guest services or the Wallace and Gromit shop, get yourself a paper ticket. Try not to lose your paper ticket, although you can get another one if needed, but try not to lose it. Use that to scan onto the rides. Therefore, you don't have to keep opening your phone, opening the Pleasure Beach app and scanning onto the ride with your phone every time. I found over the last couple of years, it's a lot easier to just pick up a paper ticket and just use that to scan on all of the rides. Moving on to the subject of food. Now everybody likes food, me especially, as you could probably tell. But food is an important part of your day when you're at a theme park or amusement park, wherever. But it can also take a long time out of your day in a theme park. So this is why I'm recommending not to go and get your food or dinner at the Pleasure Beach at say 12 o'clock when everyone else is doing it. Around 12 or 1ish at the Pleasure Beach, I often find that there is a bit of a lull in the ride queues as people start to go to places like Pizza Kitchen, Burger King, Loki's, and the other available food options in the park because it's dinner time. So if you can maximise that time to do some of the rides while they're a little bit quieter, while the masses are getting their dinner, you can go and get your dinner later on in the day, say like 2 o'clock, when the food outlets have calmed down a little bit. One common mistake that is made with Pleasure Beach is people do try to take their own food into the park. Pleasure Beach do not allow this, so if you are going to take your own food, a packed lunch or just some snacks, bear in mind that you will probably not be allowed to enter the park with those in your bag, and you might be best leaving them in the car, heading out back to the car to have them, and then going back in the Pleasure Beach when you're done. Another mistake to avoid when visiting the Pleasure Beach is carrying a big wad of cash on you, because Pleasure Beach is cashless in most cases. There is a few places where you'll be able to spend your cash, but not many. Something people do is take cash and then get it put on a prepaid card. But for me, I just use my card. It's a lot easier. I appreciate that people do not agree with companies going cashless. I do understand the frustration. But for me, since about 2009, I've always just used my card. Now, whether that's irresponsible or not, I don't know. But I've just found it easier. Rather than carrying cash, I've just used my card. And maybe I am part of the problem with everything going to cashless. But what I'm recommending here is Don't turn up with a big wad of money at Pleasure Beach, because basically you'll not be able to spend it without putting it back on your bank card or onto a prepaid card. So just bear that in mind before you visit the park. And a little bonus tip for your visit to the Pleasure Beach this summer: don't miss out on Enzo. Enzo is the spinning seats at the back of one of Icon's trains. Now, unfortunately, it is an upcharged experience, but if it wasn't, can you imagine the queue for just 2 seats that spin on the back of a roller coaster? So it is an upcharged experience, but don't miss it, because it is, in my opinion, the best way to experience Icon. Now, a common mistake with Enzo, though, is the people that do it as a 2. Now, the issue with that is the seats are too well balanced and they don't spin very well. But if you are able to do Enzo on your own, sit in the left seat, don't ride with anyone else on it, and you'll get a lot of spin, and you'll even get an on-ride photo opportunity. So that's all from me today about the Pleasure Beach. If you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It's the little thumbs up below. Please let me know in the comments section below if this video has been helpful. If you have been to the Pleasure Beach after watching this video and it was helpful, please let me know in the comments. And also, if you've got any other tips about the Pleasure Beach that could help people, please do put them in the comments section below. And finally, please remember to subscribe to Your Experience Guide. Many thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.